Okay, well, I've reached out to Mrs. Hannah and she can let me know what her username is so that I can promote her to panelist if she's on there. In the meantime, we have a quorum, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time and get going here as it's already 6:12 and there's a ton of people attending the meeting virtually. So call to order the March 31st, 2025 special meeting of the Cohasset School Committee. Would all members who are in attendance please indicate so in roll call? Mr. Carr,
Ted Carr, present.
Mr. Dial.
Lance Dial, present.
As I noted, Mrs. Hannah, I've not heard from her yet. Mrs. Leskey,
Jen Leskey, present.
and the chair is present. Craig McClellan. That gives us a quorum of 4 committee members, so we can formally call the meeting to order. The only agenda item is the discussion of fees. We have held numerous open discussion forums on this fee issue. And so what we're going to do is just dedicate this entire meeting to the fees. We're going to go through them one at a time. I'm going to turn the meeting in a moment to our superintendent to sort of introduce the concept or the agenda item, and then we'll address them one by one. And we will invite community feedback first, and then we will ask for any school committee thoughts or deliberation, and then we will vote on, or I will ask for a motion to vote one way or the other on each of the fees. We'll just handle them one by one. Okay, so Superintendent Shannon, are you there with us?
I am.
Okay, so maybe you can introduce this issue, and I will give you the permission to share there that you need to do that.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Right. So I'm gonna just quickly share the presentation that's been shared at the last few meetings about user fees. And just as a review, we are talking about fees because we are trying to create a balanced budget for FY26, trying to make up for the gap in budget from FY25, and also the increased needs that we have for FY26 to run the district. And for anyone who's listening to understand more about what it is that makes up our budget or how we get funding from the town, I would refer people back to my original presentation that's both online and on Facebook. It explains how we get funding from the town, and that the funding from the town does not keep up with ongoing school needs that are at the, sometimes some of our costs are at the mercy of inflation, but also other entities rising costs as well. So there's a few things that come into play, and we are no longer able to meet the increased needs year after year based on the increases that we receive from the town, not because the town isn't collaborating and giving us as much as they can, but because the needs are outweighing what the town is able to bring in for revenue. So one of the ways that we are looking to close the gap that we're trying to close for FY26 is through reductions. The other way is through looking at increased fees, and that there are 6 different fees that we are looking at having conversation about in a vote for this evening. The first is a kindergarten fee. 2 years ago, the district moved away from full day K fees, and the district took on that cost. The budget was not necessarily aligned to absorb that fee. And so we are looking to potentially have a vote to bring the kindergarten fee back. The rate in the past was about $3,500. We would be looking at bringing it back at $3,000, which brings us a potential, maximum potential of $300,000 into the budget. We did look at other fees for kindergarten in schools around the area. Many schools have gone to free kindergarten, free full day K, but there are still some schools who haven't figured out how to do that with their current budgets. And you can see that the Duxbury one was to be determined. Their override did not pass, so they will be charging kindergarten fee this coming school year. We're also talking about the transportation fees. We are near the top. The only school district that will be higher than us for FY26 will be Hingham. Their new fee is $360 per student. We know we're high, we know we're near the top, which is why there's 3 different rates there for you to consider. An increase from 350 to either 400, 425, or 450. Again, these are the area fees. We are close to the top. We're at the top this year, and we will be second next year if we keep the fee the same. Our ridership has gone up. We are also adding a bus and a bus route for next year, hopefully to decrease the number of students on the bus, because some of our buses are full to capacity and some of our routes are longer than we would like. So adding that 9th route will help, but the increased ridership is bringing in more money, but we are still looking to help close a deficit in our transportation budget. Athletic fees, our athletic fees haven't changed since 2008, and our costs are rising. They've risen quite a bit since 2008. So we did do, along with other schools, an analysis of what fees are around the area. Many of our surrounding towns offer a 2-tier athletic fee system, with our fees for tier 2 being for some of our more expensive sports that have to rent facilities. And the tier 1 fee being other sports that don't have to rent facilities that utilize our own high school facilities. So we are recommending a 2-tier system, continuing to keep a family cap as well. And then we are also looking at potentially adding a student activity fee. This would cover other costs that are incurred for student activities that we are creating. Some of our clubs and other non-sport activities. It would allow us to not charge students at athletic events because gate fees would be a part of that, in the hopes that we would actually encourage more students to attend and support one another. And we do run a lot of clubs right now that have costs associated with them, and we aren't at the secondary level charging for those clubs. So this would cover those costs. We're also looking at adding a student parking fee. Many of our area schools are charging our students to park, or their students to park. The one you can see, Milton, is not, but are talking about it for this coming school year as well. And so our proposal is that students are paying $2 per day to park at the high school, which would be about $360 per year. That would obviously be prorated if they start parking in the lot after the first day of school. And then we're also looking at raising our building rental fees just a little bit. This is not a huge moneymaker for us, but we do feel strongly that the fees that we collect should cover the costs of the custodians that we bring in, any other folks that we bring in, and the utility fees charges for those days to add to what, you know, where we might not be using utilities. So we are looking to at least cover the costs on our end for when we have building rentals. And so those are the fees we are looking at for this evening. I'm going to stop sharing, and then we can talk about them one by one, and I can bring up any slides as each one comes up as you need. I think you're on mute, Craig.
Not a good night here. So thank you for that, Superintendent Shannon, for that summary and that introduction. I will note that Mrs. Hannah is here as well now. She came in while you were just going through that introduction. and so has therefore not missed any public comment or anything of that nature. We haven't even started looking at any of the individual fees. So here is how I'd like to do this. There are a lot of people in attendance. I'm not sure that everyone is looking to be heard. The first fee that we're looking at is the kindergarten fee. So what I would ask is if, and I see Mr. Henry has already made a comment. So why don't we just get, before anyone else makes any comments or questions, let's just get this one answered and clear the slate. And then what I'll have folks do is if you have a comment you'd like to share relative to the kindergarten tuition fees, enter that into the prompt using the Q&A feature. If there is not in a sort of insurmountable number of individuals that want to comment, I will promote you to panelist and we can try and do it that way. But if there's a lot of questions and comments, it may just be more feasible to address it through the Q&A feature. Okay, so first, Mr. Henry. Oh, also, as I note all the time with this, make sure you're please stating your full name and your residential address. This is just to memorialize the input for the meeting minutes. So,
I can answer that.
okay, so did someone answer?
Leslie
last
just
question.
asked, Leslie had just
Yeah.
asked him to give his address, but I can answer the question.
Okay, great. So,
So,
this is Oliver Henry's question.
yep, it's about why football is in tier 2.
Yep, let's just
with the
read it though.
increased fees. Yep.
Let me just read it. Why is there a recommended increase in football fees? We do not need to rent anything over and above the school facilities.
Yep. So that's a great question. I had the same question. And what I learned is that each year we are required to recertify helmets and pads, and that comes at a cost of $12,000 to $15,000 per season. And so this helps us cover those costs.
Perfect. And we'll wait on the address there, but we'll move on to Jennifer and Corey Evans of 313 North Main Street. They ask, what services or staff would have to be cut if the kindergarten fee was not reinstated?
So if the kindergarten fee isn't reinstated, we would be looking to reduce some of our specialist positions. We have literacy and math specialist positions at Osgood, Deer Hill, and the middle school. At Osgood and Deer Hill, we have 1.5 in each specialist area. And so we'd be looking at cutting the 0.5 positions at both Osgood and Deer Hill. And at the middle school level, we have a reading specialist and a math specialist, and we would be looking at those positions as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. or Mrs. Evans, whoever is asking the question there, just let me know if you want to be promoted to panelist for any reason, or if that answered your question. And to clarify from the Oliver Henry football question we just answered, that was actually asked by Mary Henry at 34A Atlantic Avenue. Thank you for entering that information. The next question is, well, Mr. Cameron, you just typed in your name, so you may have a question. I'm not seeing it though. So maybe follow up and we'll get back to you on that one. Philip Blake, excuse me, at 8 Brewster Road. He states or asks, hi, I am a father of an incoming kindergarten student. Instituting a fee would be economically challenging for our family. Has the committee considered going to town for an override? Last year it was discussed at town meeting and there was an overwhelming amount of support to keep it free.
So one thing I would want to make clear is that with any of our fees, which is not new, which is something that is currently in practice, is that we do have a sliding scale for all fees. And so there is a and again, I'll share that I don't like the name of this. I talked about this at our last meeting. It's called the Federal Free and Reduced Lunch Form. And it really, while it's labeled as a lunch form, it really is the form that families would need to fill out for any consideration for a sliding scale in fees. And so depending on that form, we do give reductions in fee rates for all things. And at times, given, you're filling out the form, we may be looking at free as well. And so we would encourage everybody to fill out that form because it does help us also with funding. And so when families don't fill out the form, we actually get a reduction in funding. We actually, because there weren't enough families that qualified this year, we actually received no Title I funding for the school. So for a variety of reasons, we encourage folks to fill out that form. But for anyone who it is challenging, we would recommend filling out that form, and we would have a conversation about what your fee structure could look like.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Shannon. Next question is from Will Ashton of 125 Doane Street. He asks, why increase kindergarten fees that were already voted for by the town and is required by every student, instead of charging even more for a luxury like student parking spaces?
So I think a couple things. One, we are looking at bringing it back because the first year that kindergarten was free, we were addressing that with a one-time funding from the town. And then it was not necessarily factored in a way that created a balanced budget for this current school year. And so because we are trying to create a balanced budget, that's why we're looking at bringing it back. And I think as opposed to charging more for student parking, I think looking at a variety of ways to spread the fees out across the district, K through 12, so that it doesn't necessarily fall on one end of the education spectrum than another, is why we're looking at that. We also know that that is a big chunk of what is making us have an unbalanced budget at the moment. So my thought really is looking at reinstituting that fee and then coming up over time with a way to get back to free kindergarten. I think we're also looking at and having conversations with the town around an override. That's something that from the last question. And if we were to do that, that would be something we could potentially roll into that conversation, is going back to free kindergarten. But the override conversation needs to be something that we talk about as an entire school in town, not just the school district, because it really is a town-wide concern.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Shannon. Next question is from Mark Cameron.
Mr. Chair, can I just jump in real quick? I just need to clarify one point.
Sure.
if that's right. So on the, I just want to go back to the approval of the kindergarten fee. The challenge was not that it was approved and just the budget was unbalanced. We had considered that and approved it with the anticipation that we were going to receive some enhanced Chapter 70 funding that would offset the expenses. The way the calculations worked out, because of one of the inputs into that was keyed to inflation, that those contributions from the state under Chapter 70 did not hit the expectations. So it wasn't that we were just, oh, let's have free kindergarten and, the budget's not imbalanced. There was a plan in place that the budget would maintain balance with the free kindergarten, but due to the way the Chapter 70 funding calculations started to work, the Chapter 70 funding did not contribute to the budget in the same way that we had anticipated. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Dial. Next question is from Mark Cameron of 18 Virginia Lane. Do we feel these fees have unintended consequences? For example, cars parked in surrounding roads or less participation in sports for an already small district?
So I would say it's hard to answer that with 100% certainty, but what I could say is that even with our current free parking, we have students who park at Milliken because we don't have enough spots. I would I would like to think that with the increase in fees that we wouldn't have a drop in participation in any of those areas, especially because we have a way to address any financial concerns that people would have. People just need to reach out to us.
Thank you, Superintendent Shannon. Okay, so just for anyone that's logging on right now, what we're trying to do here is take these one by one. Right now, we're targeting a conversation on the kindergarten tuition fees. So I'd ask if you have any thoughts on that to make a comment relative to the kindergarten tuition fees. And hold your comment on other types of fees until we get to that subject. It's otherwise the conversation is going to be too scattered. And I need to provide some structure to this. So I know it's tough because people are going to be popping in and popping out of the meeting, but let's just do our best. And if you've asked a question that does not relate to the kindergarten tuition fees and I haven't raised it yet, it's because I'm just going to move on to the committee right now. And ask them for their thoughts relative to the kindergarten fees. If you have any thoughts relative to kindergarten tuition, I saw one just roll in here, so I'll ask that. Ann Gallagher of 137 North Main Street. She states, "I like your point, comma, Sarah, I think, referring to Superintendent Shannon, to spread the fees across all grade levels. Parents like myself, middle high schoolers, paid for kindergarten when our kids were younger, and now we're being asked to pay additional fees for sports, students' activities, and bus and student parking fees. Doesn't seem equitable." Okay, so I think that was more of a comment in response to what Superintendent Shannon had said earlier, so thank you for that. So like I said, if you have a comment, if you're out there watching, you have a comment or a question related to kindergarten fees, now's the time. And I'm going to switch over to I'm going to ask Mr. Carr if he has any thoughts relative to kindergarten tuition. In the meantime, I'll monitor these Q&As and we can always go back to it if people enter kindergarten fee comments in while we're talking. So Mr. Carr.
So I feel strongly, based on our town meeting prior vote, that if we can do anything to not have to charge for kindergarten, I would prefer to do that. We are, I think, also looking at a bunch of other ways to cut the budget. In my mind, it was clear at that meeting that that was the charge of the people of the town that voted for it at that time. I know things change, but again, it would be my preference if we can figure this out another way to not raise the kindergarten fee or not charge for kindergarten. That said, I'm curious I know people have decisions to make. And as we continue to look at ways to narrow the gap on what we're doing here, I wonder if we might consider approving, well, I guess the question is, could we approve this with the option that if we are able to narrow the gap in a different way, that we potentially could take this off the table, this one. But I welcome anybody else's thoughts on that. But at this point, I think I'd like to try to keep this without a fee.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. I think just in response to your one question relative to if we could take it off the table, I think right now we need to decide whether or not, just for planning purposes, we need to decide whether or not we're willing to do it for this year. We can always revisit it each and every year if we think we're in a better fiscal position. But I think for the purpose of tonight's discussion and vote, we need to just decide whether or not we want to reinstitute them, at least for the upcoming fiscal year.
And I would add, I just think these are every one of these are very tough decisions. We have a responsibility to live under a balanced budget. So we're at a point now where we have to make very, very challenging decisions to make sure we meet that requirement for the city. So I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Mr. Dodd, before we get to you, I'm just going to read a public comment related to kindergarten that just came in while Mr. Carr was speaking. Jean Healy Dippold, 93 South Main Street. When the town voted for free kindergarten, we did so based on the Chapter 70 projections. Since those projections are wrong, we should change it back and charge kindergarten fees. My guess is at town meeting, open parenthesis, most of whom paid for kindergarten fees, close parenthesis, would want that and remember all of this. Likewise, town meeting will not want an override here. Thank you for that comment, Ms. Dippold. Healy Dippold, excuse me. There's another comment that's partially related to kindergarten, so just read it now because it's easier for me to clean the slate as we're going along here. Tim Morrissey of 25 Arrowwood. Could you elaborate on how a parking fee spread over 4 grades is ensuring you aren't targeting a specific age group, like a specific mandatory age group? Also, will there be a free half-day option per state law, I believe? So the last sentence there relates to kindergarten, Superintendent Shannon.
Yep, so there would be a free half-day option as there has been in the past. I'm not sure I understand the question about parking fee spread over 4 grades. The parking fee we're referring to is just the student parking at the high school. And it really only applies to those students who have their license and who can drive and want to drive to school and park at the high school.
All right, thank you. So Mr. Morrissey, maybe you can clarify if you have any follow-up questions, you can type those. And again, if someone is adamant that they want to speak directly on the meeting, you can go ahead and let us know that, and I can promote you to panelist. I just want to make sure that that doesn't become completely unmanageable if there's 30 people that want to do that. Okay. In the meantime, this seems to be working all right. Okay, Mr. Dial.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as I said in plenty of other meetings, I hate this. They are tough decisions, and I don't really like any of them. On the kindergarten fees in particular, I have 2 points. One is that I do feel like we made a commitment to the town at town meeting about kindergarten fees. Ms. Dipple's point notwithstanding, and I am thinking about that as a persuasive point. We did come to town with the understanding that Chapter 70 funding would be a condition on which we could finance this, and it did not come through in the way that we thought. So that is a changed circumstance. But even so, that said, there's another element that I worry about, and that is that we are saddling a single class with the budget issues of the district as a whole. So I don't think it's fair for us to ask our kindergarten families to pay extra just because we're allowed to do so. I think kindergarten should be free. I think we should be opening our schools to people, and I think we need to be figuring it out. Miss Shannon's points on the potential cuts are deep and is not something we want to do. And I am torn by that. So I don't know that I have an answer on how I would vote just yet. I'm open to hearing other commentary from the committee, but I feel very strongly that it's not a fair result or equitable result for our kindergarten families to have them shoulder so much of the burden on the increase in utilities costs, increase in transportation costs, increase in other district costs that are borne across the district as a whole, and not just because we have kindergarten. So I'll leave that there and see where we go from here.
Thank you, Mr. Dial. I'm just sorry, I'm reviewing a comment that just came in to see if it relates to kindergarten. I don't know if it's in relation to something you just said, Mr. I'm just going to read it. 125. It's Will Ashton at 125 Doane Street. If the budget shortfall was 1 million and there are approximately 3,300 households in Cohasset, each house would see a $300 tax increase. Why is that unrealistic? That would be the most equitable option.
I'm assuming that that's referring to the idea of a potential override on the town at whole, which not the subject of this particular point of debate, but something I have been on record saying that I totally support and think we have to do that. We have a structural shortfall in our budget that we're trying to band-aid with fees right now.
Right. Okay. That is what I think it relates to. So I also want to note that we try to, and we haven't had to discuss this in the recent past, but we try to limit comments to 3 per household on these things. So if you can, and sorry, Mr. Ashton, it seems like I'm picking on you. You just reminded me that sometimes folks will sort of have a stream of consciousness and type multiple comments. It becomes insurmountable. So if you can try and limit your comments to 3 per household, that would be helpful. If it's something that you need to absolutely share, and we're talking about 4, it's fine. But just try and have that in the back of your mind. Thank you. But, you know, thank you everyone for participating here and coming together to talk about this and share your thoughts. Mrs. Hannah, do you have any thoughts on the kindergarten tuition issue?
I think Mr. Dial and Mr. Carr both said it best and said it well. You know, I think if there's a way to figure out this shortfall without charging kindergarten fees, given the fact that, you know, we did make a commitment to the town and, you know, we want these kids in school as soon, you know, as early as possible and everything. And so, you know, I am challenged as well on voting for that. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Hannah. Mrs. Leskey.
Sorry, I'll keep it brief. I mean, I also struggle with a lot of this because philosophically I believe in free kindergarten. I think it's a really important tenet of the education system. I do have concerns around the cuts and that those cuts will impact some of our more vulnerable students who need extra adults in classrooms. So it's a difficult choice, but I also think that that the town has asked for free kindergarten and has approved free kindergarten. And that free kindergarten ultimately is a good thing. And I agree with Mr. Dial that there are just some systematic issues that we need to really sort of buckle down and look at as an entire town about how we fund both free kindergarten and the schools. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Leskey. Just give me a moment, everyone, to see. Okay, so there is another kindergarten comment from Chad Adamo at 67 Forest Avenue. He states, if kindergarten were to continue to be free, Ms. Shannon indicated we would need to remove specialists from the middle school. Could she speak more to the impact that would have on the learning of our middle school students? Would that inhibit the services we are able to provide to students on educational plans? And is it correct to understand this is basically a choice between free kindergarten versus middle school education in English and math? Superintendent Shannon, would you mind taking the first?
Yeah. So I would want to clarify a few of those points. First of all, none of the reductions would impact students who are on individual education plans through our special education department. Our specialists are general ed service. They target the students who are on the cusp or need some additional support in order to keep their skills up or to close academic gaps, but gaps that do not meet the need to be on an individual education plan. So I just want to be clear that this does not impact anyone who's on an IEP. So that's the first thing. And really our specialists at all levels have been the positions that came in through COVID, the additional, which are the 2.5 positions at Osgood, 2.5 positions at Deer Hill, and the 1.0 positions at the middle school. They came in since COVID and they allowed us to close the gaps that we were seeing that were a result of the COVID experience that students were having. They have proved to be incredibly effective. I think our return on investment has been really high. We have seen through traditional academic achievement measures like the MCAS that our students have regained their academic performance standards since the COVID years. There are very few districts across the state who can say that their MCAS achievement levels are as high as, if not higher than pre-COVID. We can do that, and I think that's a direct result of the services we've been able to provide through general education to meet the needs of our students. But we are not just targeting middle school with this. We are looking at the 2.5 positions. And I want to clarify that because it's not 2.5, it's a 0.5 English specialist at Osgood, a 0.5 math specialist at Osgood, a 0.5 English specialist at Deer Hill, a 0.5 math specialist at Deer Hill, and then 1.0 English and math specialists at the middle school level. And the comment about versus middle school education in English and math these are the specialist positions. These are not the classroom teacher positions. This maintains all of the ELA and math classroom positions at the middle school. These are just the specialists. And I shouldn't say just, because they're equally as important, and I just want to make that clear. I'm just trying to clarify between the two.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Shannon. Corey Evans of 313 North Main Street states, as a parent of a current kindergarten who was free and one earlier who was paid, I would be and was happy to pay the full day fee if it means we ensure having reading specialists available. Investing in our children's education is always worth the return. I also would prefer to pay for it once instead of a part of our taxes every year going forward. All right, thank you for that comment, Mr. Evans. Okay. I don't see any more public comment related to kindergarten fees. My take on this is that we shouldn't put principle ahead of practicality. We're in an extremely difficult financial position here, and it was unanticipated. We have there are only two ways to address the situation. We can cut costs, or we can increase revenue somehow. Most of these fees are while not completely insignificant, they pale in comparison to the amount of relief that the kindergarten tuition would provide us. Sure, there may be the position that we discussed this at town meeting. We did make it a reality, but that has proven, in my opinion, to be a failed experiment, especially under these difficult financial circumstances. I think it would be extremely unwise to not look to that additional revenue when the alternative is cutting staff. We've spent a long time getting this district to where it is. I'm extremely protective of that. And I wish we were adding resources instead of talking about deleting them. But the fewer resources, and these are human resources, this is our staff. The fewer members of our staff or fewer staff reductions we can make, the better. It helps keep the positive momentum of our school district. So, and I had two kids that went through kindergarten when it was not free, and I paid for that. And I'll also note that that tuition was much cheaper than what I was paying in preschool or childcare prior to that. And it's talking about something like $3,000 spread over a period of time, I think is not an unmanageable amount, and had worked for years, sometimes at a higher rate. And as Superintendent Shannon expressly stated earlier, there are always scholarship options for those that are in need. I do not think it would detract from the amount of participation in the kindergarten program. I don't think that's realistic. I think everyone wants their kid to participate and their student to participate in kindergarten. So I don't see that unintended consequence as being realistic, nor do I find that to be a compelling reason not to support this. So I urge the committee to consider reinstating that kindergarten tuition fee. And as Mr. Carr stated, I mean, we can continuously review that, but this is a tough situation, and folks are, stating that, if there's any other alternative, we should do that, but there is no other alternative to come up with that amount of money. It's nearly $300,000, and we have a shortfall to make up for this year. And then we need another $1.3 million just to ensure level services next year. So, that's all I'm going to say on that, and I'm happy to take further comment from the committee. I see Mr. Dial has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recall, and I think last time we had this kind of attendance was we were talking about masks or something. So this is, I don't know if it's an easier conversation, but a different one. But I would like to see if we're seeing a lot of comments and questions questioning the getting rid of the kindergarten fee. Is there anybody who supports charging for or that supports keeping free kindergarten? I'm not seeing a lot in the comments from the attendees who say we should absolutely keep free kindergarten. It's certainly axiomatic to me, but it would be interesting to see if I could ask if you do support the free kindergarten, if you could just put a note in the comment field, that'd be helpful for us, I think.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dial. I have multiple windows open here as I'm trying to manage all these questions and such. So if you're a committee member, if you have something to say, just unmute and say it. I can't necessarily see you hand raising.
Would you like to have a motion on this matter?
Yes, I just would note that Philip Blake, in response to Mr. Dial's petition, said, I support free kindergarten, and Tim Morrissey said support. So there are two additional ones, Mr. Dial. I would entertain a motion at this point. And the motion, Mr. Carr, can be either to accept or approve the recommendation or reject it.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that we approve the recommendation to bring back a charge for kindergarten.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve or accept the recommendation of reinstating the kindergarten tuition fee. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
The motion's been seconded by Mrs. Leskey, made by Mr. Carr.
Can I ask for a
All in
point of
favor,
clarification?
We need to, yeah, one moment, Mr. Dow. We need to take each vote in roll call because we are meeting virtually. Mr. Dial, what is your point of clarification?
Is just to confirm, is the motion to bring back the kindergarten fee at the rates suggested in the recommendation?
Correct.
It is. It's an important clarification. Thank you for that, Mr. Dial. Everyone understand? All right. In roll call, please, your votes, Mr. Carr.
Carr, I am in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Mr. Dial.
Can I hold? I honestly am still struggling.
Mr. Dial, you're only going to be afforded an additional like 10 seconds. So by holding.
Oh, no, I meant, can we go through the other committee members?
Yes, I'm going to be back to you in about 5. That's fine, Mr. Dial. Mrs.
That's
Hannah.
fine.
I vote no.
Mrs. Leskey.
Leskey, aye.
Mr. Dial, are you prepared to vote now?
Yes, I vote nay.
Craig McClellan, aye. Motion carries by a majority vote of 3 members. Superintendent Shannon, please reinstitute the kindergarten tuition fee as presented tonight. Next topic is transportation fees. Superintendent Shan, would you mind just sharing that screen one more time where it outlines the transportation fees, just to remind everyone? We've
will
lost
do that.
Superintendent Shannon.
Nope, I'm
Okay.
here. I'm
Okay.
just also managing my
Yep.
my screens. Can you see that?
Yes,
Okay, hold on. Let me get to transportation.
of course. There you go.
Okay.
That's what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everyone. So just like we did last time, I'm going to ask for comments related to the transportation fee only. Again, I see some other comments that are not related to, that weren't related to kindergarten tuition, that may not be related to transportation fee. I'm holding those for now. But let me just, as we have that up there, everyone can look at it and see what the proposals are. There's a few different proposals on this one. And let me just survey the comments here and see. Which one's related to transportation fees? right, I don't see any, but I do have a few additional comments that are, at this point somewhat moot, but Mr. Dial, you had asked people to chime in with their support. Free kindergarten, Sarah Reeves, 362 Beechwood Street, supported free kindergarten. Mark Hammer, 18 Virginia Lane, supported free kindergarten, saying this is only a temporary plug for the solution. And then a Patrick Mueller Nicole Vella Mueller of Windy Hill indicated she was logging on as we were taking a vote. I just want to read her comments into the record. Child will be in kindergarten 2 years. Preschool fees are exorbitant, especially for multiple children. Would like to request no fee for kindergarten. She'd like to ask how many people on this call have children in preschool to represent the vote. The answer to that is none of the committee members have children in preschool right now, though I believe multiple committee members had children in school when the kindergarten was not free and paid for kindergarten, some at a higher rate than what was just approved. Additional comment, I was not on the list for this meeting as the child is not in Cohasset Public Schools yet. There's a large group of parents who should be represented on this call who are not. We advertise the meeting as best we can, and we've talked about these fee issues at multiple meetings, and we've been talking about it for weeks. So this is not the first time we've talked about this. This is why we're having a special meeting. This is just to really take the vote. Frankly, I'm surprised by the number of attendees at this meeting because we have spoken about it so many times, and there have been a grand total of approximately maybe 6 or 8 people that participate in the discussion to date. We're doing the best we can with that. This was a meeting to take the vote so that we could get it in time for the to stay within the confines of our budget calendar in time for recommendations and votes to be made for a town meeting. All right, so here's a transportation fee question. Claire Martin of 158 Lambert's Lane. Are you considering reinstating transport fees for family outside the 4-mile radius? Should that be considered? Even though our family benefited, I never understood how we got free bus transportation. It should have been means tested, not mileage related. Superintendent Shannon, do you want to take an attempt at answering that for us? That is Claire Martin's question at 158 Lambert's Lane.
I do. Sorry, I had to stop sharing in order to find my mute button. I can go back to that in a few minutes if need be. So the distance in whether we charge a transportation fee or not is not actually our choice, it's state law. And so given that and it's a 2-mile radius, and so given that we can't change that for us as a single district.
Okay, thank you. If you have any follow-up thoughts, Ms. Martin, feel free to ask them. Elizabeth Frazier at 27 Windy Hill Road regarding transportation states, I would go with proposal number 3. Everyone pays for the bus already anyway. Thank you for the comment. I don't see any other comments related to transportation, so I'll move to the committee at this time, starting with Mr. Carr.
So, look, we have to make some very tough decisions about everything about our budget. It's unfortunate, but I think we have to be consistent with the proposition of what we provide and the shared cost of doing so. So these will be tough decisions, but I think transportation is one that can help us solve our budget shortfall.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Taking a moment to address a comment from Corey Evans of 313 North Main Street. My elementary school children sit on the bus for over 30 minutes. Some children need more than that, which is way too much. I will gladly pay more if we can add a route and my child can sit on the bus for less time. Thank you, Mr. Evans. And again, just a reminder for folks to try and limit the amount of comments per household if you can. We know that people feel strongly about these issues, but just be cognizant of that if you can. Mr. Dial.
So unlike kindergarten, this one's an easier one for me. Our Miss Owen or Miss Shannon, I know that the transportation deficit is one of the drivers of our significant budget hole. Can you remind me of the magnitude of that hole that we face with transportation? Or the increase year over year?
Ms. Shannon, I don't know if you want to share that slide that has the cost, and it shows you that we're in deficit in the school budget line item and in the revolving where we collect the fees. So we're obviously not covering the cost of our transportation. So this is the slide here. And you can see for last year, the school budget is on the left for FY24, and then on the right is FY23, and you can see the growing deficit from year to year and the shortfall. So in 23, the shortfall was about 78,000, and then in 24, it was about 298,000.
So, I mean, this is not one where this fee does not disproportionately fall on a single group. It falls on the people who benefit from it, which is the people who drive the bus. The schools are operating this at a deficit. This all informs my decision that raising the fees is appropriate here, especially in a year where we need the additional revenue. I'm not sure where we land on the proposals. Proposal 3 seems too far out of line from other ones, but when we're looking at a $200,000 gap and that only raises $45,000, that seems attractive, notwithstanding the burdens that it faces on the family. Otherwise, it's burdens being placed on the school from people who aren't riding the bus. So that seems sensible to me.
Thank you, Mr. Dial. Mrs. Hannah, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think that given the fact that it's such a small town, I do believe there are a lot of people that sign up for the buses that don't actually use them. And so I think the interesting thing is going to be the fact that the families where it is kind of more of a nice to have, where they're not using it on a regular basis or anything, may not sign up for it. And so where I think it's interesting is I think our enrollment will come down for the bus for transportation, which will help our bus situation with them being over capacity. And but I think that it's not going to save us as much money as what we're proposing that it would, or projecting that it would. And so I just, it's going to be an interesting thing to see how this plays out.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Hannah. Mrs. Leskey?
I'm also in favor of increasing the transportation fees. I think that it makes sense. Just it's logical.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Leskey. Just going back to the community comments, Miss Jennifer Madden, who had shared her address earlier, but now I've deleted the comment and I don't know where it is. I would gladly pay more for the bus. She states, I would gladly pay more for the bus, comma, proposal number 3 is fine. Thank you for that input, Ms. Madden. I guess where I stand is we're already fairly high on this. Is that correct, Mrs. Owen?
Yes.
So I think perhaps an increase is warranted just given the circumstances I articulated earlier, but I think I could be persuaded to adopt either of the proposals. I feel like, minimal increase is probably the best where we're already on the high end of the spectrum, but we're also a fairly unique district in that we have very low commerce and for that reason, we're a little cash strapped generally anyway, even aside from these extraordinary circumstances we've been facing. So I guess at this point, let me just make sure there's no other comments. Oh, hold on a second. one comment relates to the buses, so I'm gonna read it now. It's from Mrs. Kate Rennie at 9 Forest Notch. She states, I appreciate the need to review increased revenue, but the spending and the revenue for all these fees should be discussed in the context of the current year budget. In parentheses FY25. I've read in some historical school committee documentation different amounts for the bus lease. Open parenthesis, sometimes it was listed as 90,000, sometimes as 150,000, close parenthesis, and it was sometimes listed as a capital expense. Could you please clarify the bus costs and if it is in the capital budget? Mrs. Owen or Superintendent Shannon, would you mind taking this?
Yep. No, that's a good question. So for this current school year, FY25, the total bus lease is $151,000. 90,000 of that is currently in the capital budget. It's paid for and supported by the capital planning committee. The other 60,000 of that comes out of the operating budget. We're really grateful the collaboration with the capital budget for this year going into FY26. They are approving not only to cover the whole cost of the bus lease, the $151,000, but they're also have approved an additional 9th bus so that we can add an extra route. That does free up $60,000 FY26 in the FY26 budget. However, it does not cover the costs that are still associated. You saw in the other slide that we are running at a negative in our transportation that is far above $60,000. So even though that will help us for FY26, the additional fee structure will also help us try to create a balanced transportation budget. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Superintendent Shannon. If there's any follow-up questions, just go ahead and use the Q&A feature to ask that. Mary Bagrius, I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name, doing the best I can with it. 200 North Main Street. My son has a 45-minute bus ride in the morning. We end up walking to school because we can leave later than the bus and still arrive earlier at school. Like others have said, I'm all in favor of a bus fee increase, especially if it means we have a shorter ride with the additional bus route. Thank you for that comment. Okay, I don't see any other comments. Is there a motion on the floor to approve any one of the three proposals? Or reject this in its entirety?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal number 3 to increase the school bus fees to $450 per student to an $850 cap.
Second
Motion's
the
been made
motion,
by Mr. Dial to approve proposal number 3. Is there a second to that motion?
second from Carr.
Seconded by Mr. Carr. All in favor and roll call. Mr. Carr.
Carr, aye.
Mr. Dial.
Aye.
Mrs. Hannah.
Aye.
Mrs. Leskey.
Aye.
Craig McClellan, aye. Motion unanimously carries. So Superintendent Shannon, please institute proposal number 3, which would charge $450 for bus ridership.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next fee issue, which is athletic fees. Perhaps while we allow people to generate some comments if they feel strongly about this, Superintendent Shannon, you can just repopulate the relevant slide. Apologize. I don't know if I was just muted when I asked everyone to make comments relative to athletic fees now, if they want to. I must have muted myself inadvertently. And while everyone's doing that, I'll just ask, Ms. Owen, when's the last time we increased the athletic fees in any way?
I believe it was back in 2008. It's been quite some time.
Superintendent Shannon, are you aware offhand, not to put you on the spot, of when that was? Is that accurate, 2008?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going on the better part of 20 years here since we've done that. That's, I think, a pertinent point. Okay, so I don't see any comments from the community relative to this one. Are there any discussion points from the committee, Mr. Carr?
No discussion points from me.
Excuse me, I misspoke. Thank you, Mr. Carr. There is a comment on this from Mrs. Lauren Wagner at 69 Elm Street. It says, based on the presentation, tiered sports fees seem driven more by what other districts are adopting than by the actual costs or changes within our own district. I previously inquired about a breakdown of costs by team and have only seen costs for swimming. It seemed like this information was not readily available. Given this and the potential for discouraging participation in certain sports, I request that we consider a uniform increase instead of a tiered model. Excuse me. Notably, the pool rental fee of $4,000 is shared among 2 sports teams. Thank you for that comment and for your participation, Ms. Wagner. And just to sort of touch on one of the points that Mrs. Wagner raised, because I think, if I remember correctly, Mrs. Hannah had raised this as well, getting sort of, maybe others, I think we've talked about it at least, getting sort of more itemized breakdown in terms of what the allocations are for the fees for each sports. We don't have that information tonight. It's something that we are actively working on, in part due to Mrs. Wagner's recent request. So, it's something that we're going to try to get together and share with the community. But at this point, we are making a decision with on the information that we currently have in front of us. Oh, there was a comment from Claire Martin at 158 Lamberts Lane. Why are we looking at a tiered sports fee structure? I understand that costs are rising and we therefore may need to increase student athlete fees across the board, but per NEASC standards, program resources are to be equitable and appropriate, quote, equitable and appropriate resources, facilities, and opportunities are afforded to all student athletes and sports programs, end quote. What is equitable for a 2-tier structure?
So, in terms of equity, equity is not always mean the same. Equal is not always equitable. And in this case, the 2-tiered structure really is about the costs of each sport and the cost to run each sport. And several of those sports that are in tier 2 do cost us more money to run each year. And so the additional fee for those tier 2 helps us really cover those costs, because the sports program in an ideal world, and it is not an ideal world, the user fees would cover the costs. That is not possible at this time. And so this helps us get a little bit closer to covering the costs for each individual sport. We have the costs that at those tier 2 fees where the rental of those facilities and some of the other sports does end up being higher than what our local at the high school sports are costing.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Shannon. I mean, I've stated before that it may even make sense to explore sort of individualized fees per sport, depending on what it costs and, how much is it? So my kid plays, soccer, basketball, and softball. Okay, well, how much is each of those sports each year? And that's how much you have to pay. And that includes new uniforms with their names on it, the facility fee, whatever it might be. And then we're not getting into allocation issues as well. But, it's just, I don't know. I mean, that's not even half baked at this point. That concept's just something that I've been thinking about as I've been having these conversations with the folks. Laura Soderberg of 16 Black Horse Lane writes, I appreciate the need to bifurcate the fee schedule for the higher expense sports. However, it has long been requested for additional transparency as to where these fees go each year. And Ms. Soderberg, thank you for that comment. You just reminded me that you are one of the people that I had conversations with about the request for more itemized breakdown there. So I thought Mrs. Hannah had as well, but in open meeting. But if I incorrectly attributed that statement to you, Mrs. Hannah, I apologize. I thought you had mentioned it in the past, but I could be wrong.
I did mention it in the past, and I do think, I'm not opposed to raising fees, but I think that we owe full transparency to everybody to understand where these fees are going. There's a lot of assumptions out there about where they're going, and I think the transparency will allow us to mitigate that. And then I know there's questions about one of the sports that had come on and had raised its own money to put on its own season, and they were charged participation fees. However, those fees went into the bigger pool and not back into the sport that was not being sponsored by the school. And so I think we owe it to the town to fully understand where these fees are going, how they're being spent, and allow people to see that it is equitable, and maybe not the dollar amount, but it's equitable to what the sport costs.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Hannah. Erin DeMello of 85 Ripley Road. She writes, I am in agreement with both Claire and Lauren. I think she's referring to prior commenters. Given that we do not have adequate information in the form of a breakdown from all sports, and the breakdown for swim has some inaccurate information, voting on a tiered fee structure at this time does not feel right to do. I also have a question on the 2 different family cap amounts. If you have multiple kids and sports across tiers, how does that work? Could you explain that, Superintendent Shannon or
Yeah.
Mrs. Owen?
Yep. So I'm going to speak to the second part of that question, because I just wanted to share that the question about the fees for swim have come up, and we've been working to get those, but it's hard for us to turn around our full set of information for every sport as quickly as has been requested. And so with regard to multiple kids on multiple sports and across tiers, really it's based on each individual family. So if you have a student who is in tier 1 for 1 or 2 sports and a student who's in tier 2 for 1 or 2 sports, it doesn't matter. It's when you reach those family caps. And so, you know, if you're at tier 1, but you have tier 2 sports as well, then when you hit that $2,000 cap, we would be looking at capping you. But if you're only at tier 1, it would be that $1,400 cap. So we would really need to look at, I mean, we would really be looking at each individual family at that point, because, you know, it could fall somewhere in the middle as well, based on kids and sports and seasons. It's hard to create a model for every potential situation for each family. Some families have 3 students, you reach that cap really quickly, no matter which tier you're in. If they're playing multiple sports, especially.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Shannon. Moving on, another comment from Claire, who shared her name and address previously. I don't have that in front of me at this moment. I think everyone would like to see a detailed cost breakdown for all sports. Only the swim budget was provided today and has raised further questions. Some of the allocated costs for swim appear very high and should be revisited. Okay, thank you. Jennifer Madden, who again shared her address in a prior comment, states, I think there is legitimate concern that we will lose swimmers due to the higher fee. I would support a unilateral increase. We don't want teams like the swim team to go away. Thank you, Mrs. Madden. No, there's more. Sarah McSweeney of 14 Summer Street. She states, thank you all. Thank you to all the hard work on the revenue work stream. I also echo the need for a more deep dive on the cost per sports. It feels a bit opaque and out of balance. Additionally, it would be helpful to have a view on expense management. While raising fees is one way to fill the gap, but we are using rigor on costs. But are we using rigor on costs, specifically procurement and sourcing for the district? That would be very helpful to see in detail. Thank you, Mrs. McSweeney.
So can I just speak to procurement and
course.
sourcing? We are
course.
always reviewing that. We, depending on costs, and Miss Owen can jump in if she wants, but depending on costs, we are looking at state bid lists because that's where our lowest potential costs are. And even within those state bid lists, we are constantly reviewing those prices. For instance, all of our facility supplies and materials, everything from cleaning supplies to paper products like toilet paper, we are reviewing. Our head custodian has been doing a great job talking with a bunch of vendors. We are looking to switch vendors this year because he thinks he can get some lower prices. So that is something we are doing on a regular basis, because there are times when you switch vendors and they can give you better pricing. And so when that is available, that is something that we do.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Shannon. So I have a question myself. Well, I'm sorry, where were we? Mr. Dial, I think we hadn't heard from you yet on this, right? Or had we?
That is correct.
Okay, I apologize. I just got a little bit fragmented there. Why don't you go ahead and share your thoughts?
So questions on costs notwithstanding, we do have some things. I think slide 12 is costs here, and I think the issue is no matter how we. I mean, I agree with the commenters that more granular assessment could be helpful and more transparent, but it's not close. And we've got looks like we have a athletic gap of $231,000 if I'm reading this correct. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. So that's kind of what I feel like we're addressing here. So the other thing I'd like to know, if you could go back to the fee, can you just tell us the fee differential that we'd be approving? I mean, there are athletic fees now, and that we'd be approving a $350 and $500 fee with the 1,400/2,000 cap. What's the current fee structure so we can identify the delta?
The current fee
Okay.
structure is $250 per sport per child. Just one fee at the moment. And I
No
believe the
cap?
family cap is 900.
That's helpful. So again, similar to buses, this feels, again, some of the questions notwithstanding, the delta in the fee doesn't feel too huge, given that it hasn't moved in almost 20 years. And given that we're running at a $200,000 deficit, this one seems like fairly straightforward to me that we should do it.
And can I just say one thing? Like, I don't disagree with what everybody's saying and looking at all the costs, but similar to what the two of you have just said, all of our sports are running in the red at the moment. And so it's not just one sport or another. Our entire athletics program is running in the red. And we will continue to look at what each sport costs and gather all of that information. But because this is a fee that hasn't increased since 2008, referee fees, or, time at the pool, at the rink, all of those costs have gone up since 2008. And so I think when we look at other districts and what their fees are, really we need to have fees that are aligned more with current costs for running an athletics program.
Superintendent Shannon, may I ask you a question? I'm just, because it seems like a lot of the comments have to do with concerns about the tiers. I mean, is there a way to just increase a sort of across the board more general fee? So maybe, I don't know, split the difference between the two tiers and establish that as the fee increase? I mean, people seem, I think they seem to want a little bit more information if we're tiering these things. And I mean, I think people are looking for more, as Mr. Dial put it, granular information. But I agree with Mr. Dial that regardless of what that information might be, the circumstances are quite obvious in terms of like our need. And we haven't increased the fees in a while. So, and I think most folks that are commenting really don't have too much of an issue with a fee increase. So I'm just wondering, is there a proposal here that we could come up with and consider that's not tiering the fees that might address a lot of people's concerns? And while we're thinking about that, I'm just going to read another two comments that came in. Kate Rennie and 9 Forest Notch. These are more statements and questions. Again, appreciate the need for increased revenue, but it feels arbitrary without details. The expense details with line items for coaching, uniforms, buses, equipment, etc., must be provided. With a budget deficit, there should be existing monthly reports with line items, and therefore it should be readily available. There was a typo there, and I think I read what was intended. Next comment is from Aaron DeMello, who provided her address in a prior comment. I don't think anyone is opposed to a fee increase. That said, having tiers as opposed to a uniform increase while we do a deeper dive into each individual sport seems more appropriate. Okay, thank you for both those comments. So Superintendent Shannon or Mrs. Owen, oh, wait a minute, there's yet more, there's more. Hold on a second. There are multiple comments here. Laura Soderberg of 16 Black Horse Lane. Does the $231,000 shortcoming recognize the fee for the spring sports yet to be collected? It's a good question.
So
No.
just to be clear, that 231,000, Ms. Owen, correct me if I'm wrong, that was from prior year. That was FY24. Our current deficit is not that deep. And our current deficit does not include yet, unless it happened in the last 2 days and I'm unaware of it, the collected spring sports fees. Even when those come in, we will still be at a deficit.
That's correct.
And to answer your question about can we do one fee? Yes. I mean, you can certainly, as a committee, decide to do one fee. I mean, we could do a little quick math to see what the different options could potentially bring in. I would definitely I would recommend splitting those two if that's what the will of the committee is.
It was just a suggestion I had
Yeah.
where I'm looking at a lot of issues with the tiering. So where we're rolling out an increase in fees, which I think is completely warranted. It hasn't been done in over a decade. Maybe we just figure out one fee, and the quickest way to do that is, to me, is just figure out what the delta is between the two proposals and then just split it. So what is it? It's $150. So $350 plus 75 or 500 minus 75 is what
So
I would propose. It's just an
425.
idea. I'm not forcing that idea. I'm one of 5 members. So it's just,
Yeah.
and we haven't even heard from all the members yet. Mrs. Hannah, I know you're there. I'll get to you in just a second. I'm just trying to get through these comments that everyone is providing here. And just reminding everyone, really try to limit your comments if you can. I know it's something that is impactful for folks. But we also had multiple meetings before this to discuss this. So just throwing that out there. I really don't want to disincentivize participation. We love that people are here and passionate, but it's this is like I think the 4th time we've talked about this in a meeting.
Just splitting the difference between those would be a fee of $425.
Right. And then the family cap would be what? The delta there is 600. So we're talking about 300, so 1,700.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what sport you play. Okay.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Frazier, 27 Windy Hill Road, says, I agree with Craig, just do one fee. Thank you, Mrs. Frazier, for your comment. Lauren Wagner, 69 Elm Street, says, as a parent of 3 kids who play multiple sports, I support increasing an across-the-board increase. Thank you, Mrs. Wagner. Claire Martin, 158 Lambert's Lane, please consider increasing all sport fees equally. Please don't put a tiered structure in place. Okay, thank you very much. Ann Gallagher, who may have stated an address in a prior comment. I don't know. Mrs. Gallagher, if you have not, can you please provide your address? Is there a way to just increase the athletic fee and raise the cap across all student athletes and avoid the tier system? I will have 3 high schoolers that play both tier 1 and tier 2 sports, and it's confusing. I also echo the others who ask more transparency with how the fees are being spent across all sports. Thank you very much, Ms. Gallagher. I think that we are considering right now exactly what you're suggesting, and which the last 4 or 5 commenters had suggested. Miss Jennifer Madden, who did provide her address in prior comment, these fees are a big bargain compared to the fees of playing club sports. I hope that we can keep our high school teams robust and strong. Thank you, Mrs. Madden. Ann Gallagher did provide her address earlier. I'm sorry, there's just so many comments I could not remember if I had seen your name yet. 137 North Main Street. Appreciate your participation. Sorry to single you out. Okay, Mrs. Hannah. Thoughts on athletic fees?
I had spoken earlier, Craig,
Oh.
just around the need for transparency.
Oh,
So
right.
not opposed to the fee raise. I'm really would like to give the community full transparency into how the money's being spent.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Hannah. Sorry for calling on you twice there. Mrs. Leskey, thoughts on athletic fee increase proposal?
I support the proposal. I actually am very much in support of doing a one-tier system. I actually think it might be simpler to administer. It seems to feel right to the community. And it may work for us financially as well. Like I think it's maybe a win-win all around.
Thank you, Mrs. Leskey. Mr. Dial?
So the single tier structure does seem to have, and right down the middle seems a quick way to do that. But before we move down the road and kind of undo some work that the administration had done to come up with the two-tier structure, Ms. Shannon or Ms. Owen, do you have any concerns with adopting a single tier? And can you remind us again why you did a tier 1 and tier 2? Because we're going to undo that. I want to make sure we know what we're giving up. And then I'll also note, just for the record, that given the number of students, if we do just do a split down the middle, we are actually raising even more money. So the cost per family would go up because the 360 students would be paying 425. But anyway, Ms. Owen or Ms. Shannon, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just did some quick math and I don't think the numbers are that different if we split down the middle and make it a one-tier fee, so I would be okay with that. But the reason we did look at two-tier fees is because the cost of running those 3 sports is significantly higher than running the tier 1 sports. But that said, I think the increased fee over, one fee, if that's what feels better to people, I think it still achieves our goal of closing that revenue gap for our athletics department.
Thank you. We have one final comment I'll take on this, that Jean Healy Dippold at 93 South Main Street states a uniform increased sport fee makes sense right now. I think a sport by sport assessment makes sense and will be tricky. You need to account for big capital spend on things like our new track, football field, new tennis courts, field maintenance, etc. Once you add it all up, a flat fee may make sense. She said I didn't need to read that, but I wanted to enter it into the record. Thank you, Ms. Healy Dippold. Okay. So I think everyone has heard the community's sentiments. I think we've all spoken about this. Is there a motion of any type on the floor to propose any increase, to reject any increase? We have 3 other fees to consider, so let's do it.
I'd make a motion to approve a fee increase for sports, a single tier at $425 with a family cap of $1,700.
Motion's been made to accept and approve the singular fee that split the difference of the 2 tiers that were proposed. Is there a second to Mr. Dial's motion?
Second, Ted Carr.
Seconded by Mr. Carr. All in favor, and roll call. Mr. Carr,
Carr, aye.
Mr. Dial,
Aye.
Mrs. Hannah,
Aye.
Mrs. Leskey,
Aye.
Craig McClellan, aye. Aye. The motion unanimously carries. Superintendent Shannon, if we could please implement that new fee structure for the athletics for the upcoming fiscal year.
Yep. Thank
Next fee to discuss is the student activity fee.
you. I'm about
maybe-
to share my.
Yeah, maybe we can share that
Give
just to
me-
remind
yeah.
everyone of the proposal that's watching. And I'll just state to everyone that if you have thoughts to share on the student activity fee, please use the Q&A feature to share that input now.
And you all see that.
All right. And could you just reiterate,
Yep.
this is well, I'll let you reiterate, Superintendent Shannon.
Yep, so we were looking to add a student activity fee. We have a lot of things that happen within the schools where our students don't necessarily pay a fee, but they have costs. You know, we have clubs that run, we have, for instance, the middle school and high school plays that go on, and a lot of students are participating, and there's no fee involved. A lot of our students do go to sporting events, and we want to increase their ability to attend sporting events. And so listening to our students actually, who asked us to not have gate fees for them, and thought maybe we could come up with another way to capture those fees. So this is one of the things that we thought of there as well. And then we have other activities like field days and other events that happen during the school day that come out of student activity budget line items, but don't always cover all of the costs. And so this was an idea that we proposed that many other schools do have to help cover those types of costs.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Shannon. Mr. McClellan had to have a connection issue for a moment, so I'm going to step in being the vice chair. I will solicit any comments on activity fees from the public at this point. But seeing none in the question and answer, I will do the unfair privilege of sending over to Mr. Carr for any comments on student activities. Being our first presenter.
No comment from me. I do understand this issue.
Okay. So next, then I will go to, it would be me, but Mr. Collins is not here, so I'll go to Ms. Hannah.
I guess my concern is this is, you know, the athletic fees we're not making every student pay for. So why would we make every student pay for participating in the play and everything else? Like, I think if the students are participating in clubs and plays and non-sport activities, then they should pay for those. And the athletes who might not be able to participate in a club or other, you know, non-sport activities because of their commitment to their teams, and the times might conflict and everything, shouldn't also have to pay for this. And so I'm a little confused on like why we're not just charging fees to those people that are doing clubs. Someone else brought up a comment in the last time we talked about this, that a lot of the athletes don't even have an opportunity to go to each other's games because of their commitments in their own sport for away games or practices or anything else. So then they end up getting dinged twice, basically. And so if we're raising the athletic fee, my recommendation is that we raise or start implementing fees on these you know, activities and clubs and everything else that we're not currently doing.
Yeah, I think when we had the conversation about this, it was also for events that happen throughout the day and covering some of those costs, and those are events that they participate in. And on average, like at the high school, even the students who participate in sports are also participating in roughly 2 to 3 clubs, because those are happening during the day, but even during the day, those have associated costs. Things like student council, National Honor Society, newspaper. So I think that's why we were looking at it being for all, because we have such high participation rates in our clubs at the secondary level. And they're happening throughout the day because we want students to be able to participate in both athletics and regular clubs.
Okay, I mean, I get it. I just think if a student is it's the same thing as parking, right? If a student is parking there, they're going to get charged a parking fee potentially after tonight. So I don't understand, like if they are participating in the club, then charge them for that. If they're not participating in a club, they shouldn't be charged for this. And so, yeah, I am challenged by like continuing to add to the kind of like piling on to the parents. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Hannah. Mr. Dial.
Ms. Shannon, clarification point with this student there, I saw on the prior slide, there was a 35% enrollment thing. Is this fee charged to every student, or is it just charged to a subset of students? How's it levied?
So we were talking about charging all students, but we could go a different route and we could just charge those who participate in clubs. I think the hard part is if we also include things like gate fees, that gets really hard to track. And if we include things like field days and my goodness, I'm losing my words, pep rep, all the things that end up costing the schools money, that gets really hard to track as well. So I think if we went a different route, we would have to redefine sort of what this is and then continue to, like, if we only charged for clubs, then we would have to continue to charge students for gate fees. So we would have to redefine what this looks like, which would be possible. But if we're putting it all under the umbrella, then it would be charged to all students.
And does this replace an existing fee or fees that students are paying now?
We don't have a current fee right now for all of those things. We do charge students as they come to sporting events. That's the only one that currently exists.
I guess in my view, and this is one that I've gotten a lot of comments on, it's not a huge dollar amount relative to some of the other fees that we've had. I don't want to discourage participation in clubs, so I'm not a huge fan of trying to do it individualized. And I understand the point that Ms. Hannah's made and others have made in the community that it doesn't feel fair to call it an activity fee. This feels like one of those, I don't want to call it a junk fee, but this feels like we're just going to charge you a different fee. And we're going to call it activity fee. It just feels like we're just charging you. So this is one I don't see right now, unlike the bus fee and the other fees, I see a clear deficit. This one feels like we're just creating a new fee and we're charging it. So I'm not a fan of this one in its current iteration. It doesn't mean that I don't think there are costs there that we could offset with fees. I just don't think I'm prepared to support that at this point without more information on how we could more surgically apply that.
Thank you, Mr. Dial. Mrs. Lasky, do you have any comments on this
Just
issue?
a point of clarification. From previous meetings, my understanding was that this fee also wasn't just covering club participation, but things like all school field day, when presenters come and there's an sort of a whole school event. And I'm just thinking as a parent, I would much rather pay upfront for those extras that my children are benefiting from than to be asked to pay for them a la carte, because they are a part of the regular school day. They are enhancements to the school programming, and all of our students take part, whether they are athletes or not. That they're not optional things, but they are extra things, and that the school is currently absorbing those costs. And I also feel like in other realms, activity fees, I'm thinking at universities, are very common. In the private school world, activity fees are very common. It's a way for sort of saying we do lots of special things that we can't necessarily always enumerate, that all of the kids benefit from, all of the students benefit from. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lasky. Just going to read a couple comments that have come in here. Stephanie Saunders of 10 Stratford Terrace. Could we consider an overall fee cap per family? Maybe even an option for families to donate directly to the fees and support other families. Superintendent Shannon, do you have any thoughts on that? A proposed fee cap per family?
I don't know that we've thought about that yet. And I think I think that would take a lot more thought than what I could provide an answer for right now.
Yes, I mean, that's different from the proposal. It's not something that we would consider at this juncture. It may be something that we consider in the future, but right now what we're looking at is the proposal. And I think that we can always have this discussion can go ongoing. It can be ongoing. It's not just because like we said with the kindergarten, regardless of what we do tonight. I mean, if there's a fiscal circumstance that allows us to stop charging certain fees or reduce certain fees, or reimagine certain fees, then, we're always willing to do that. Elizabeth Frazier, 27 Windy Hill Road, states students should not incur any cost to participate in clubs. You want to encourage participation. Students can fundraise for their club events as sports teams do. Thank you, Mrs. Frazier. Jennifer Madden asks, do these fees cover things like math team and debate team? The answer is yes. Thank you, Mrs. Madden. PJ Monahan, 15 Clay Spring Road. He states, if every student gets dinged for an activity fee, regardless of participation, it's essentially just a fee for being a student. Thank you, Ms. Monahan. Laura Soderberg of 16 Black Horse Lane states cost matching would indicate charging club members for club activities like you do for athletic fees and for athletes, and continue to charge for gate fees. Field days and presenter costs are often paid by CEF or PSO. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Soderberg. Sarah McSweeney of 14 Summer Street states, folks, this feels again a bit opaque. What exactly are we levying fees on? For example, field days are sometimes subsidized by PSO, and events such as a play. Shall we charge tickets? ? A blanket fee feels a bit unbalanced. Also, can we get some idea what the daytime club costs are? The more information people have, they will get more comfortable with incurring additional or new costs. And again, I go back to looking at costs for a more balanced approach. Okay, thank you, Mrs. McSweeney. Finally, Mrs. Kate Rennie of 9 Forest Notch states, if you give a pass for gate fees for students, you have to subtract it from that other gate fees revenue number. This seems too vague, particularly without any expense figures to base the fee on. Many clubs only require a teacher stipend, and the students do the rest. Open parenthesis, such as student council, semicolon parents, paid full cost of Molly UN, etc. Close parenthesis. It should not be an across the board fee for everyone, especially when other fees are increased so substantially. Okay. Thank you very much for that comment, Mrs. Rennie. It seems clear to me, just based on the commentary, that there's a majority view of the committee here. So I don't think we need to entertain any more comments. I have no further comment. And I would just ask for a motion to either approve or reject the proposal as presented by Superintendent Shannon and Ms. Owen. 7:50, guys. Anyone can speak up?
I'll make a motion to reject the proposal for an activity fee.
Excuse me, Mr. Dial.
I will make a motion to reject the proposal of imposing an activity fee.
There's a motion on the floor to reject the proposal as presented tonight. Is there a second to that motion to reject?
Second from Carr.
Motion to reject has been seconded by Mr. Carr. All in favor? Roll call. Mr. Carr.
Carr, aye.
Mr. Dial. Mr. Dial.
Aye. Can you not hear me?
I can
Now
now.
we can.
Thank
Aye.
you. Mrs.
There we
Hannah.
go.
Aye.
Mrs. Leskey.
Nay.
Craig McClellan, aye. Motion carries by a vote of 4 members to 1 member. So, Mrs. Shannon, the committee has rejected that proposal, and we'd ask you not to impose that fee. Moving on to the penultimate fee we're discussing tonight, the student parking fee. There are some comments related to this that Mrs. Frazier has been patient enough to have me delay here until we got to this topic. So I'm just going to read them here while Superintendent Shannon brings up that slide. So first is a comment that Mrs. Frazier does not think it's right to charge high school students to park at their own school. She also states, if you charge the high schoolers to park in the lot, in terms of equity, are the teachers also being charged to park in the lot? That said, wouldn't you also charge teachers and visitors a parking fee at Deer Hill, Osgood, and the middle school? All right, thank you for those comments, Mrs. Frazier. If any other members of our school community or community at large have any questions related to the student parking fee, go ahead and make them now. In the meantime, what the current proposal is to charge a $2 per day fee that would yield of a total fee of $360 per student per year, and that would yield a total revenue gain to the district of $41,400. Obviously, we can consider any amount. This is the proposal, and they did the math on the $2, but we could consider $1. We could consider $3. We can consider whatever we want. And there are no questions from the community, so we're just gonna move right into the committee's comments. Mr. Carr, do you have any thoughts on the student parking fee proposal?
No, I understand this issue and I don't have any thoughts on it.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Mr. Dial?
So I'll just, some historical context, this came up 4 years ago. We proposed a student parking fee proposal. I opposed it at the time on the grounds that we didn't need the money and it felt like we were nickel and diming our students. We need the money now. Student parking is a privilege. It's a luxury. We have buses that we just approved to increase the fees for. So and I heard earlier that we're at capacity in our lots. So I think that charging a $2 a day fee for parking, for student parking, is eminently reasonable.
Thank you, Mr. Dial. Mrs. Hannah, any thoughts on this student parking fee?
No, well, I think we'll have to see the impact on the community around. I think, I forget who brought it up, but, kids parking on the streets around the school and that sort of stuff.
Yes, I can tell you who raised that issue. That was Mark Cameron that raised that issue. Mrs. Leskey, do you have any thoughts?
I have no additional comments.
All right, Mrs. Frazier added that we made up this money with the singular athletic fee. And Mrs. Frazier has made it clear that she's opposed to this idea. My position is that maybe we consider doing a $1 fee. I think it is. I think I disagree with the sentiment that it's generally wrong to charge students to park at their school. I think many districts do it. I also think that there's I don't know what you'd call it, just an inherent value to imposing this fee. I mean, this is life. I mean, like, if any adult goes into Boston, you got to pay to park. I mean, it's just, that's the way life is. And I think that our students should understand that this is not a cost that the parents should be taking on. If your student's driving, they are very likely in a position where they are able to, have obtained some sort of part-time job that many of us, have, procured when we were in high school. And, I think it would be completely reasonable to ask them to come up with that money. I know that's exactly what I would be doing if this proposal carries. When my daughter and my son are driving their cars into school, I would certainly not pay it for them. If they wanted to drive to school, then they would come up with the money and pay for it themselves, or else they'd find a different way to do that, to get there. But that's just my perspective. We have another comment from our community members, multiple comments coming in at the same time here. First was Will Ashton of 125 Doan Street. Says, how do we justify making a single grade pay tuition, and we're even debating paying for parking? Kindergarten parents alone are bearing more than 60% of these budget items. Thank you for your comment, Mr. Ashton. I think it's more of a comment than a question. Ann Gallagher, who has stated her address and prior statements and comments, is the fee per car or per student? If 3 siblings carpool, do they pay $2 for the car or $2 per student in the car to park? Thanks for the clarification. I will probably also be paying for the bus for my younger two.
So
Proposal is per car.
per car, and I can sort of answer, and if you want to read Mr. Cameron's comment, I can sort of answer both of those at the
Sure.
same time.
Sure. Mr. Cameron of 18 Virginia Lane asks, who and how will the system be policed? Do we assume it's the same car every day?
Yeah, so it is per car. And it would be sort of monitored the same way that we currently monitor. So for those who don't have students at high school and drivers yet, currently the students have to submit to be able to park in the student lot. They have to submit their license number, they have to submit their make, year, model, license plate number. And students who receive parking spots actually get a hang tag. They have to have the hang tag on their car in order to park. The lot is monitored, definitely monitored more at the beginning of the school year, and then sporadically throughout. So that would be the same. In order to get the hang tag, you would have to pay the fee. And just to be clear, we don't have enough spots for every child who wants to park as they get their licenses throughout the school year. And so that's why we do have some students who park over at Milliken because they don't have their license by the start of the school year, so therefore don't get a spot. So we do monitor to make sure that only students who have been approved get to park in the lot, and that would continue once the fee is incurred.
Mr. Dial, you have a comment related to something that Superintendent Shannon just said? Looks like
Yes, a
you.
clarification.
Thank
I think this is a good question. I'm embarrassed that I hadn't thought of the logistics here. But I guess will students like come and pay $2 each day? Is it going to be leveled on a daily basis, or will it be levied on a monthly basis, semester? How will the fee be levied?
I would say that it would be levied at the year because the majority of students submit for their parking actually a couple weeks before, I don't know, maybe almost a month. I should know, my kids have done this. But before the school year starts, you have to submit for your parking pass. And so I would think that it would be levied at that time. You pay for the year. And as students get their license, if there are spots available, then it would be prorated from that point forward. If for some reason the student stopped parking and changed how they get to school, then we could talk to that student individually. If they needed to no longer park there, we could reimburse whatever part of the year that would be.
So the fee is not really, it's not $2 a day, it's $360 for the year. Okay.
Yes.
Which maths out to $2 a day. But
exactly.
the experience is going to be, you couldn't just decide I'm going to park Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and only pay $6. You're either in or you're out.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dial. Just going to some comments that are coming in. Laura Soderberg's made her address known in previous comments. I can understand paying for this benefit. However, this is a significant jump from 0 to 360 as the comparable neighboring districts do not pay that much. I would support a $1 a day more in line with other districts. Thank you, Ms. Soderberg. Sarah Reeves, 362 Beechwood Street. This is a very reasonable fee. Support. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Elizabeth Frazier. If you are going to charge the student teenagers, are you also going to charge the teachers? Do they pay the same fee per car? Employees who work in Boston have to pay for parking. Mrs. Frazier, we are not, the proposal is not to charge the teachers, it is to charge the students. While I understand your comment is aimed at showing that you believe there's some inequity, the only proposal is to charge students for the parking, not our staff or teachers for the parking. Okay. Mrs. Leskey, have you spoken yet on this? I cannot remember.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Oh, no,
Please
maybe
share
I
your
have.
thoughts.
I have, I think.
Oh,
my
wait, before you go.
No,
Has Mrs.
we haven't-
Hannah spoken on this? I think I went out of order. Mrs. Hannah, have you shared
Oh.
thoughts on this?
I have no comments.
Okay. All right, Mrs. Leskey, back to you. Sorry.
I'm in favor of parking fees. I think that perhaps doing $1 a day, that especially if in spirit we're thinking about students covering this cost on their own, which I also really love that responsibility for students to take on. That seems, you know, it's letting go of one Starbucks for a week of parking. So, I mean, there's just some good sort of economic lessons, I think, embedded in this. And there are costs to parking, whether or not we're talking about Boston parking or Cohasset parking, that there are costs to maintaining that lot that need to be covered. And so I think that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Leskey. We have a comment from one of our students, Fiona Rennie, lives at 9 Forest Notch. Will the price be less for seniors because they will not be there for the same amount of time as juniors? And at the end of the year, how will the lot be policed when there are open spots for other students who do not receive a spot to park? These fees will also really impact student athletes. Superintendent Shannon, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
So I think that's a great question that Fiona just brought up. I think we can talk certainly about the the senior piece, by the time they get to graduation with senior week and all of that, it's like this year, their graduation is on the 7th and they are there. Even though they're done with classes, they're there for senior week, that whole week right up to graduation. So it's about 7 days less, maybe even fewer days less, but we can certainly talk about that. And then when it's open, I think we'd have to have that conversation. That's actually not something we considered, but there is a week from when the seniors are done in this year. It's June 7th up until June 17th when the last day of school is. So we can talk about what those last couple of days look like.
Well, in terms of the sort of, I don't know if you want to call it equity or fairness piece about
Mhm.
seniors paying less because they're there less, I think that can be absolutely prorated. I mean, especially if we're doing $1 a day, right? We're talking about 180
Yep.
days of school. That was it. So, I mean, you can just deduct for seniors whatever amount of days they are not going to be there, which again reflects that sort of perspective that if you're going to work or somewhere like, that in Boston or something like that, you'd only be parking for the time that you're actually parking. So, I think it's a good point that we wouldn't charge them for a time that they're not actually parking their car. As far as the open spaces, I think you just articulated that those open spaces would only be for a very short time. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's some sort of like very brief windfall for students, but I don't know that that's a consideration that's overly compelling for me anyway, in my calculus of whether or not to impose this. But I think the senior discount or whatever you want to call it, reduction is that I think that's a pretty good point.
So on the senior deduct, I think we might be making it too complex for debating it at this time. I would just say we just do it for everyone, and if we needed to, we could allow seniors to refund at the end of their term. But what I worry about is, what if you have a brother who's a junior and then they use your pass and you're only paying the senior rate? There's just lots of things to think through about potentially gaming the system. I'd just say charge everyone the same. It's not that big of a delta. And if we really wanted to, I don't think we'd need school committee approval for Superintendent Shannon to decide to allow people to refund their fees if they're going to turn in their parking pass at the end of their term.
I think that's right. I think that if we vote to approve the fees, there's some discretion, operational discretion with the central office and how they're going to administer that. And I think that Mrs. Superintendent Shannon just heard that student input that may make sense. So I think that what we're considering now is whether we want to accept or reject or modify. So is there a motion on the floor at this time relative to student parking fees?
So I'd move to impose student parking fees at $1 a day for a total of $180 for the year.
Been a motion to approve a $1 a day student parking fee for a total of $180 per car per year. Is there a second to that motion made by Mr. Dial?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Mrs. Leskey. All in favor and roll call. Mr. Carr.
Carr, aye.
Mr. Dial.
Aye.
Mrs. Hannah.
Aye.
Mrs. Leskey.
Aye.
Craig McClellan, aye. That motion unanimously carries. So Superintendent Shannon, we'd ask you to impose that student parking fee for the upcoming fiscal year. Lastly, the building rental fees. So if anyone's watching, you have comments relative to building rental fees, go ahead and make them now. This is the last topic. So I would imagine if you have any comments, it would come now. Here's the proposal for the building rental fee. All right, we'll just get right into it. Mr. Carr, do you have any thoughts on this proposal?
No comments from me.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Mr. Dial.
It's going to be the similar comment. Can Ms. Owen or Ms. Shannon, can you confirm that these fees are offsetting and no more than offsetting the costs of our rental programs?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I mean,
If I could just add, some of the reason here, like in the custodial in the cafeteria, the custodians that work these, or the cafeteria that work these they're paid time and a half, and these rates don't make up some of our custodians' time and a half. So we're actually paying for a portion of the custodial fees.
I'll just add that this is not something that I take lightly, even though it's late in the meeting here. I understand that many of our community programs are held in our student buildings, and we've talked about this before, and we don't want to discourage people doing that. But at the same time, we can't run at a loss and not be able to fund our schools. So I would support all of these.
Thank you, Mr. Dial. Mrs. Hannah, would you like to comment on the building rental fee proposal?
Yeah, I think again, it's like a transparency thing. I agree with Mr. Dial that we should absolutely not be losing any money, but I also am like curious at some of these, if lacrosse uses alumni field during the day, there is no custodian, there's no staff running it or anything else. So again, I think it's more of understanding the transparency behind it. And I can understand on a, Friday night we had a game, or Saturday night, and we use the lights, like maybe that would incur a fee if it's after a certain hour or anything. But I'm kind of struggling with some of the field space, especially given the fact that we're so short and there literally are 2 fields that are full fields in the entire town, and one happens to be alumni field. So I'd just like more, I guess, transparency and, different facilities and what it actually costs when a town program's using them.
Thank you, Mrs. Hannah. Mrs. Leskey, any thoughts or comments?
I'll I echo what Mr. Dial says in terms of we do need to cover our costs when we allow for other organizations to use the facilities, which I think is a wonderful thing and a wonderful use of municipal buildings. It's an additional stress, I understand, on those organizations and on those families that help support those organizations. But again, that it can't be a source of deficit.
Thank you, Mrs. Leskey. I don't see any more community comments in the Q&A dialogue box. So at this point, I think anyone that excuse me, Mrs. Soderberg, who has made her address known in connection with prior comments, asks, are you changing from a per hour fee to a per student fee? Superintendent Sheen, could you clarify?
Yeah, for our seasonal rentals, they've been per student for a long time, or for several before I arrived. So that's not a shift. And for non-seasonal rentals, then it becomes hourly.
Hopefully that answered your question, Mrs. Soderberg. I echo a lot of the sentiments the other committee members had made. So at this point, we just can't be operating in the red. It doesn't make fiscal sense, especially in this climate. Is there a motion on the floor to either approve, reject, or modify the current building rental fee proposal?
I move we approve the rental fee proposal.
The motion to approve the rental fee proposal as presented. Is there a second to that motion?
Can I ask you one question? Superintendent Shannon, can you put that slide back up for 1 second, please? Sorry, I think. So yeah, I think we have to choose either increase to 25 per child or increase to 30 per child before you go ahead and make a vote.
I see.
Good point.
Sorry.
No, that's a great catch.
Well, so let me clarify, because Mr. Dial's question was, are we just covering the cost here? So which one covers the cost? Can we cover the cost 25?
It will cover some of the costs. I wouldn't say 100%.
Okay, so the answer is no.
But I know we've had in-depth conversations over the last few years about the seasonal rate and the impact on teams, which is why we were trying to keep it minimal and go, even if we have to increase again in another year, an increment of $5. I would probably recommend going with 25 for this year and see what it brings us to.
Okay, well, where we're not certain, I mean, it seems like there's uncertainty as to like how much that would cover. I would certainly be in favor of the lesser fee, where we're increasing all these fees that we just voted on. So I think that, I mean, You
Can I-
know, the problem here, I would vote against this just on the basis that it doesn't seem to be fully baked. But the problem is that I know that we're operating in the red, and I don't want to operate in the red either. So, you know, as close as we can get back to the black.
Mr.
would-
Chair, may I make a motion to amend the motion to include the reference to $25 for the seasonal rate?
You may.
I
Okay.
will so do so.
Okay, so the motion has been amended to approve the building rental fee proposal as presented as to the $25 per child increased seasonal rate.
I
Okay,
think I'm moving to amend Mr. Carr's motion, so I think we have to vote on my motion, then Mr. Carr's motion as amended, if approved.
I think that's correct.
okay. All right. Well, Mr. Carr's motion wasn't seconded, so we could ask Mr. Carr if he's willing to withdraw his motion.
Oh, yes,
Sure.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now why don't we?
And I'll
vote?
withdraw my motion.
Okay, great. Now, are there any new motions on the floor?
I'd like to move that we approve the recommendation based on 25, the number 25,
And all others.
and all others.
Okay.
I'll
Is
second
there a
that.
second to that motion?
Seconded.
The motion's been made by Mr. Carr, seconded by Mr. Dial. All in favor and roll call, Mr. Carr,
Carr, aye.
Mr. Dial,
Aye.
Mrs. Hannah,
Aye.
Mrs. Leskey,
Aye.
Craig McClellan, aye. That motion unanimously carries. And so Superintendent Shannon, we would ask you to please adopt that proposal in so much as it increased the student fee to $25.
Thank you.
All right, there were some other comments I'm just going to read into they came in while we were voting. But Joe Pinozzo, who may have made his address known in prior comments, I can't remember. If not, Mr. Pinozzo, maybe you can type in your address. A $5, he states a $5 increase is far more palatable than $10 per student. I think he was commenting on our discussion about 25 versus 30. He indicates that his address is 61 Elm Street. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Pinozzo. I think it's listed as Patrick Mueller, but I think it's Mrs. Mueller because she was commenting earlier and made her address known in connection with prior comments. Was the school parking lot fee already addressed? I have seen this raised a few times in community chats. Can other options on cutting costs make up for these additional fees? The school parking lot fee was addressed, but she is amending her comment. She said, apologize, meant the school buses being parked in a private parking lot, not the school parking lot fee as additional source to save money. Yes, that is being addressed. We're trying to find that's not on the agenda tonight. That is not anything we were voting on tonight. And there'll be updates in future meetings about that. We are working on alternative solutions in that problem. Okay. And Jennifer Madden stated that her address is 64th Avenue for the record. I think she made that clear in prior comments. And Mrs. Mueller stated, why not starting with cutting costs first before adding fees? We are absolutely cutting costs. And as we stated at the outset of the meeting, there's two ways to address this: reducing costs and adding fees. We're doing both, but we're trying to mitigate the amount of reductions we're making because that can reduce the amount of human resources and then slow the momentum that we're getting in the district. So these things have been taken into consideration, Ms. Mueller, and we appreciate your input. And but for this meeting, this was just a special meeting on additional fees only. They've all been voted on at this time. But we encourage you to reach out to any one of us if you want to share additional insight or perspective, or the central office at the school district at any time. She states, thank you for consideration. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to close public comment and ask for a motion to adjourn this much longer than anticipated meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to make a motion, but first I'd like to just thank everybody that participated today. It was wonderful to have so many families involved in this discussion. We need your help, and I encourage you to please stay involved. And thank you always to the administration for your support as we work through these tough issues. And I move we adjourn.
Thank you for those sentiments, Mr. Carr. There's been a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Leskey. All in favor, roll call, Mr. Carr,
Carr, aye.
Mr. Dial,
Aye.
Mrs. Hannah,
Aye.
Mrs. Leskey,
Aye.
Craig McClellan, aye. Motion unanimously carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time and participation. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.